ho, dear ones, and welcome to this part 2 deep dive into your intuitive languages. I love talking about intuitive languages because I am a linguist in non-intuitive speak. I just love languages. I love learning foreign languages. I'm conversant in 5. I'm right now studying Dutch, and I'm at the B1-2 level, looking to get even better, hoping to really get advanced. And then once my Dutch gets to an advanced point, I want to go back to my other languages, which I feel like I've forgotten because I've been so focused on Dutch, and sort of refresh those. So I'm an absolute lover of foreign languages, of the spoken word, and I'm a lover, an absolute lover with a big L, of foreign language of the senses. And our intuition speaks to us in senses mostly, but also signs. And our intuition speaks to us in an infinite number of ways. But we really want to primarily focus in on the senses, because those are the primary ways that we kick off and receive communications with the divine. And before we dig in any deeper with any of that, I would love to share with you a listener review. And this review comes from Alyssa Laurie, and she says, talking about my episode about the new money heart space. And if you haven't had a chance to check that out, we will link in the show notes. And she says, this episode was just what I needed to hear. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. And it helped me reframe where and why I get stuck around an abundance mindset. Heart set, I love it. Oh, I'm so glad you love it, because I do too. I just sent it to all my teen, adult children and partner. I'm so grateful to have found it when I did. Aw, what a great review. I love that you sent it to your family. Hey, listen, I pride myself in being able to take complex spiritual ideas and translate them. I am really a communicator. I'm a translator. I'm a lover of foreign languages. And one of the foreign languages that I love to play with is translating complex spiritual ideas and concepts and processes into plain language that you can integrate into your experience right away, and in ways that lead to real results. So if you have family or friends who you would wish to expose themselves more to some of these concepts, but you fear that they may find it too airy-fairy or too confusing, hey, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to use plain language that people can relate to, because that's one of the things I get frustrated by some spiritual teachers. They leave me feeling inspired, but I have no idea what they just said, and I have no idea how to take action on this inspiration I feel inside. So what I want to do is leave you feeling inspired, but yet understanding what you just heard, integrating those lessons, and being able to take real live action in the form of doing or being in ways that lead to real results. And this episode right here is part 2 of a 5-part series to deep dive into the languages of your intuition. Your intuition is one of your key 5 spiritual gifts that enables you to communicate with the spiritual realm. Learning and expanding your intuitive languages is a key and essential aspect of communicating with your higher self, source, and spirit guides at higher and more sophisticated levels. Last week, we explored how to clarify the mother tongue of your intuition, which is your dominant intuitive language. And if you haven't yet, I do recommend you checking that out. It kind of sets everything up for the 5-part series, and we'll leave a link to that episode in the show notes. And today, we're exploring the foreign languages of your intuition. So let's get to it. In today's episode, I reveal how honing your many intuitive languages boosts your overall intuitive abilities, how to identify your current developing intuitive language, and a secret trick for getting juicy, detailed intuitive downloads. We'll end on an invitation that will have you getting super fluent in your developing intuitive languages while at the same time activating advanced intuitive abilities that you never dreamed you'd have access to. So please stay with me until the end. Well, hello, Soul Guide Circle. That is the name of this global and growing community of soul-guided leaders and entrepreneurs. In this Soul Guide Circle, we are using our spiritual gifts to grow prosperous, heart-led businesses that are on the leading edge of consciousness. Find a link to join our closed Facebook group at AllisonScamble.com or in the show notes. Today, we're talking about the foreign languages of your intuition. And it's really important to start to get to know all the ways that the divine is speaking to you. And that's why we want to explore into these different intuitive languages. And that's actually how it boosts your overall intuition, because the divine right now is speaking to you in lots and lots of different ways that you are likely missing. I miss it too. We all miss it, okay? However, if you recognize and learn and understand for yourself and your own energy and your own gifts, all the different ways the divine most naturally speaks to you and all the different ways intuitive insights arrive to you, you are going to become a much, much more overall intuitive person in your life and in your business. Because I guarantee you, there are times in your everyday and your every week that a divine insight is arriving right into your lap. And because you haven't learned how, because none of us were taught this in school, and you haven't had the opportunity to learn how to recognize that that indeed was an intuitive insight, it's just going to get missed, overlooked, second guessed. I hear it all the time with my clients where they tell me a story about something that happened. And, there's a lot of stories that a client could tell me to warm up, say, a one-on-one session together. So why do they choose the stories they choose? Well, there's a divine reason. There's a message in there. There's a learning. There's something that's setting up the coaching session for us. And they're likely not even realizing it on a conscious level. They're just like, oh, I feel called to share with Allison this story. And so often I hear this like powerful punch of an intuitive message in for them. And I will say, well, that's the divine talking. That's your higher self talking. That's your spirit guides talking. And then it's like, oh, yeah. And then all of a sudden, they immediately see it. And on an intuitive level, their inner knowing kicks in. It's like, oh, yes, of course, that was an intuitive message. And I was just the mirror that reflected back to them what was actually happening. So indeed, doing a bit of studying on and noticing in your own life all the different ways the divine speaks to you is only going to make you a much more overall intuitive person. So in my signature certification program, Soul Blueprint, which teaches you how to connect to and co-create with the spiritual realm at higher and higher levels, and specifically how to communicate to the spiritual realm at more sophisticated levels, we uncover your dominant intuitive language, which was the topic of last week's podcast episode, and that is like your mother tongue. That is the intuitive language that comes most easily for you. And although our intuition and the divine speaks to us in an infinite number of different ways, there are 8 key Clair senses that we often use to receive messages from the divine. And a quick recap on those is clairvoyance is the sense of sight, clairaudience, sense of hearing, clairsentience, sense of feeling, and this is usually that physical feeling, getting that gut feeling, getting the tingling up the spine. Claircognizance is that sense of knowing. You don't know how you know, but you know that you know. Clairgustance is the sense of taste, but not coming from a food source. Clairaudience is the sense of smell, but again, no physical source. You just smell a rat or smell an opportunity. Clairempathy is the sense of emotional feeling. And clairtangency is that sense of physical touch. So when thinking about your dominant intuitive language, so the mother tongue of your intuition, another key way to identify it is to notice which of your physical senses, so your sense of sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch, is most powerful within you. Do you have really good eyesight? That could mean that you're also very high in clairvoyance and that sense of sight, getting visions in your mind's eye. So my dominant intuitive language is clairaudience, sense of hearing, and I have the hearing of a bat. I can hear a pin drop. I'm very sound sensitive. That also means most days I do not like loud music, although I can be in the mood for loud music. But usually I'm saying, turn that down, because my husband and my daughter love loud music. So that's a constant ongoing battle. So if you notice where you have a lot of abilities in your physical senses, that could point you to your dominant non-physical clairsense. Our dominant intuitive language tends to stay with us from birth to death. It will tend to not change, although it can. Remember, there are no absolutes when it comes to spiritual teachings. There's always exceptions, and things are always subject to change. However, you will likely find that your dominant intuitive language does stay more constant for you. You're developing intuitive language, and we all have at least one developing intuitive language at any given time of our journey. That is the intuitive language that your higher self is asking you to flex. And by flexing the muscle of your developing intuitive language, which is just that, it is developing. It is like learning a foreign language. When you flex that muscle, it enables your overall spiritual gift of intuition to get more powerful. So for example, my dominant intuitive language is clairaudient, and for some time now, my developing intuitive language has been my clairvoyance. So my sense of vision, sense of seeing. And I tend to use my clairvoyance for different things. And you may find that this happens for you as well, that if you are doing one process, a certain intuitive language appears, or for another process, a different intuitive language appears. What I mean by that, and to provide you an example, is when I do energy healings, that's when I'm really engaged in my intuitive gift of clairvoyance. I get visions into your energy system so I can pinpoint exactly where the block is coming from. However, if I'm doing a visualization exercise where I'm trying to visualize an ideal outcome or visualize soul-guided intention, sometimes I have a hard time accessing my clairvoyance. Sometimes visions arrive with relative ease, and whenever you're struggling to receive the intuition, something wants to shift. Maybe you're too much in your head. Maybe you have a block that needs to be released. Maybe you're wanting to see it, but it actually wants to arrive in a different way. So if I'm visualizing an ideal outcome and I'm not getting anything, then I don't want to struggle. I don't want to squeeze a vision in or force a vision. I want to take some deep breaths and notice what other sense is coming up to receive the message. And for me, in those situations, I will typically go back to my dominant intuitive language, my clairaudience. And it's in that clairaudience where I actually get messages of what is in the vision. And that is just as powerful as actually seeing a vision in your mind's eye. So if you find that you're struggling with one of your intuitive languages, you might be focusing on the wrong one. And there might be another way that the intuitive insight wants to arrive. So let's get to how you can identify which developing intuitive language wants your attention at this point of your journey. And developing intuitive languages tend to change over time. When you get really good at one developing intuitive language, just like when you get very fluent in one foreign language, then it is time to move on to the next one or go back to one that you studied a few years ago. So with developing intuitive languages, we want to focus in on what our higher self is calling us towards right now at this point in our journey. And it's the same process I offered in last week's episode to clarify your dominant intuitive language, and it's taking deep breaths, pivoting your awareness down, sinking into the body, coming into the present moment, placing your awareness on your heart space, and setting the intention to connect to your higher self. And with that connection to the higher self, grounded in your heart energy, you ask the question simply, what is my developing intuitive language at this point in my journey? And then you want to perceive what you receive coming back in response and notice which intuitive language you use to receive it. It may be your dominant intuitive language, which is your go-to, telling you a different intuitive language, but maybe you receive it as the developing intuitive language. So what I mean by that is let me just double check. Yeah, my developing intuitive language is still clairvoyance. So when I do this process, I get a vision. I get a vision of the word clairvoyance. And if you go through this process and you're not sure, take your best guess. And this is where you really, really want to go to the gym of your intuition. This is not a one and done process. This is clarifying. It's like asking your higher self, which foreign language are you calling me to learn? Oh, French. Okay. Now I'm going to enroll in a French class. I'm going to download a French language learning app on my phone. I'm going to get in a French conversation group and I'm going to get serious about learning French. Your Clair senses your intuitive languages work in the exact same way. It's like memorizing vocabulary, conjugating verbs, getting to know the grammar, getting to know the conversation and the idioms and the expressions. And the more time you spend with your intuition, the more fluent you will get and the more sophisticated the downloads you will receive from the divine. And that brings us very, very nicely to a secret trick for receiving detailed intuitive downloads. Well, okay, so the real trick is carving out time each and every day to go to the gym of your intuition. If you would like help with that from me, I do encourage you to enroll in Soul Blueprint. I teach you step by step how to develop a daily practice that works for you, your energy, and your busy schedules so you can really become fluent in your intuitive languages. And beyond that, there's another trick, and that is noticing how your intuitive languages show up in a bilingual manner for you so that you can receive more and more detailed messages from the divine. And how this works is you take your dominant intuitive language, typically, although whatever intuitive language wants to arrive is the one that wants to arrive, and then you pair it with your claircognizance, and that is your inner knowing. So getting back to when I do energy healings, I'm always in a bilingual relationship to the information coming through about the reading. I will get a vision of your energy system and a vision of the block. And then my claircognizance kicks in, and that's the inner knowing, telling me exactly what the block means. And is it a past lifetime? Is it ancestral? Is it, something from childhood? Is there an insight that we need to know in order to clear it? Are there some barriers up that are keeping the energy held inside? There's so many different things that could come in to tell me about your block, with the purpose, of course, of getting us everything we need to know so that I can support you in the releasing of the block and the healing of the block. So how you can play with this at home is think of a question you have for your life and your business, and you're looking for guidance and direction from the divine. And so go through the 5-step process. You take deep breaths, pivot your awareness down, connect to your body, connect to your heart space, set the intention to connect to your higher self. And then when you get to step 5, which is perceive what you receive coming back in response, I invite you to activate the bilingual intuitive gifts inside of you and see if you can, with mindful intention, use 2 intuitive gifts. So it will likely be one of your clairsenses plus claircognizance, which is inner knowing, but it could be something else. It could be hearing and seeing working together. It could be smelling and feeling working together. So see if you can practice 2 clairsenses working together to get you the intuitive answer, guidance, and direction, and see if you can notice which 2 clairsenses are arriving. And as always, whenever you're not sure, take your best guess, and you are likely very much going in the right direction with these so-called guesses. The divine speaks to us in so many different ways, and the more we recognize those ways, and especially the ways that come most naturally and easily for you, is the way to get you more intuitive and more sophisticated in your abilities to communicate with the divine. Going to the gym of your intuition is so important to be able to really hone these abilities and really starting to recognize which developing intuitive language you're being called to hone in at this point in your journey. My invitation for you this week is to ask your higher self, what is my developing intuitive language? And to play around with that intuitive language in the next coming days and really honoring where you are. So if you're at the beginning side of this journey, being very light and easeful and curious, and if you are more advanced, really pushing your edges so you can get more sophisticated in your ability to communicate to the divine. That's a wrap for this week. I'll be back in your earbuds next week for part 3 of our 5-part series to amplify your intuition. And as always, until next time, may your soul guide the way.